Welcome to the 2020 DC Black Film Festival. I'm founder and festival director Kevin Sampson, and I'm honored that you join us this evening from wherever you are in the world. In fact, if you could, rep yo city in the chat and let us know what city you're joining us from or what country you're joining us from. Also, be sure to answer our poll question below. I'd love to know, how many short filmmakers we actually have in the audience. Or if you haven't done it yet, let us know that as well. During the course of the conversation, you guys can ask questions of our panel of distinguished guests, and we'll try to get to those. You can see an ask question button below. To find out more about the DC Black Film Festival, please visit dcbff.org, where you can find out about our lineup of films and live free events this year. Plus, you can cop a nice t-shirt or something like that at the store as well. You're here for the power of the short. This live event is done in collaboration with the DC Shorts International Film Festival, which is going on right now. And one of our guests will talk a little bit more about DC Shorts in a moment. But I'm very excited that we could have a crossover kind of power up panel to discuss short form filmmaking and why it's important. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panelists for this evening. First up, we have award-winning filmmaker of Unarmed Man, Harold Jackson. Also, we have award-winning and skilled comedy director of Love New York, Dionna McMillian.
Hello.
And last but not least, we have board chair for DC Shorts and filmmaker Melissa Bisagni.
Nope. Hi, thanks, Kevin. And thanks for inviting DC Shorts to collaborate with the DC Black Film Festival. We're super excited. My colleague, Pam Nash, might also be joining us. She's another local filmmaker and board member of DC Shorts. As you said, our film festival is also taking place right now, and it's going to be running through September 23rd. And, we've already had our screenplay reading. We have a short screenplay contest every year if people are interested in entering, and the readings are up online on our website if you want to go and vote for the best short screenplay, not just the reading, but just the screenplay, the content itself. That would be great. And yeah, I'm excited that we're community partners with you. I am also a film programmer. I program primarily Native American films and films from the Asian Pacific American community. And I'm going to give a little shout out to Piscataway Nation, which is where we are right now in the DC metro area. So thanks.
That is what's up. Okay, so just to be clear, we're all on different Wi-Fi systems, and it's the internet. So things might happen, echoes may occur, somebody might go and sound like a transformer. Pamela Nash is also a member of the board of directors for DC Shorts. Pamela is joining us right now. We're trying to get her camera up, but Pam, if you could say hello.
Hi, do you have me? Am I?
We can hear you.
You can?
Yes, we can hear you. We just can't see you.
Oh, okay. I did tell it to let the camera show, but I'm seeing a thing that says video format not supported. So that's great. I'll just talk.
All right. Say hello to everybody. We're live.
Hi, everybody. My name is Pamela Nash. I am a local filmmaker here in DC, and I am on the board of DC Shorts.
All right, awesome. So again, thank you everybody for being here. We have two representatives of DC Shorts. Harold and Dionna are alumni of the DC Black Film Festival, so I'm really excited to see you guys. First question I wanted to put out to the panel. What do you love about short filmmaking? Let's start with you, Melissa.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm a programmer. I was saying the other day that I figured out that I average over 3,000 short films that I see every year. I think that for me, I love stories, and I love hearing personal perspectives, individual perspectives. And I think for me, for someone who is really focused on programming films from marginalized communities or communities that are not heard from often, what's great about the short film is that so many more of them can be made by so many more filmmakers. So one of the biggest concerns, especially with Native films, is that you get one film comes out and everybody's like, I know Native America. And you're like, yeah, you don't. Like, we're over 500 nations here in the United States alone. And they're vastly different, you know, and then we're talking about Canada, Mexico, just in North America. But Indigenous communities all over the world, though they share some similarities, oftentimes philosophical similarities, of course, cultures are different, and their stories are very different, and politically they're very different even. So the more films we can get out there about each community, not even that, but just any individual story, helps build a greater understanding or appreciation for the variety of cultures that are in our own community, you know, our own US society, I think. So that's part of why I love short films. But I also have I'm very immature and I have a very short attention span, so.
That's all right. Harold, how about you?
Well, I haven't done a short in a while, but when I was doing them, one of my biggest the things that I liked most about it was the freedom, right? So you could, you know, there's a million ways to approach how to make a short, excuse me, a short, but kind of the two major factions are to do a traditional type of film that proves that you can do this on a bigger level, so please hire me, or just to experiment, you know what I mean? Just to be free. And I think that's the way I approached the shorts when I did them, was to just try stuff and get it wrong and get it right, and say things that you wouldn't say in a way that you wouldn't say them in a feature. And you know, and like you know, we heard before, like you can make 2 or 3 shorts a year. It's very difficult to make more than one feature in a year. So you can really stretch yourself and push yourself and experiment. And I think that's the most important thing about shorts, is it's just kind of the freedom that, you know, usually it's your money or someone you know gave you some money. So you can, you know, you have that sort of, you don't have to answer to anybody kind of thing. And that can be fun if you utilize it.
Most definitely. And Harold, we'll also get into, you know, how you took the power of short filmmaking into making a feature. Dionna, how about you?
Well, I have pretty much the same answer as Harold. I like that I don't have to wait for anybody to say yes. I moved from New York to LA a few years ago, and I'm very much in the process of learning the industry game. And a lot of it is, you know, waiting for people to approve of you, to hire you on to bigger projects, to see if they like, you know, what it is that you're pitching to them, to see if they'll give you money. And that can be a long process. Whereas with a short, as Harold was saying, you could make 2 or 3 in a year, or several within, you know, a few years, and come out with something really good quality that keeps you in the film festival circuit, keeps you active in the film community. You can generate some press. And the way to do that for longer form content is substantially longer. And so, you know, sometimes I'm not patient enough to wait around for other people. So I like being able to take the power into my own hands and say, okay, I'm going to create a project this year. I also do, as Harold said, like to have the ability to experiment. So while my focus is in comedy, in various styles of comedy, I can also play around in the documentary format, in short form, or dramatic format, which I'll be doing in my next few projects. And I can do that a lot more easily than if I start directing feature films and get on a certain path. It can be a little bit more difficult to switch over to another genre.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. And I do want to get into kind of, it seems like a theme that you all mentioned, which is experimenting. But Pam, let's hear from you. Why do you love short filmmaking? I'm
going for creative control, because I came at filmmaking from the writer's point of view, right? I write my short story and I've got my story and it's tight and it says nothing more than what it needs to say. And I want to put it on film the way I wrote it. So being able to be that kind of a storyteller, because there's not a lot of room to explore and develop and play with characters when you've only got a 10-minute window to make your point. I actually like having that restriction. I like having that small space to really focus my storytelling, and almost to the point where I prefer it. I don't know that I have a lot to say that would be feature length, but I definitely have a lot of 10-minute things to say.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting because, this being the power of the short, I do want to ask you all, is short filmmaking important? It's kind of rhetorical, but why? I heard you all mention, experimenting. Pam was just talking about, the power of being able to be really concise with your short form filmmaking. So why is it important that we make short films? So, like, why not just jump into feature filmmaking? Dionna, let's start with you.
I just want to clarify. So the question is specific to someone who wants to be a filmmaker, and it's like, why would you want to start with shorts first instead of jumping into a feature? Is that?
I think not only that, but it's more so like your personal opinion. Just why do you think that short form filmmaking is important? And so whether it is for you to jump into it or as you've done like with web series, why is it important to you?
Sure, I'll make that two-pronged. So a less specific answer to me and why I think is generally important is because everything's on the web now. Everything's digital. Everything's about social media. That's substantially different from when I started in film. So if you had to ask me that question when we were in film school together, I may have had a different response to that. I would have just said the only reason it's important is to make a short film so you can get to make a feature film or something like that. I think the landscape has changed significantly, and I think it's in the midst of that transformation. For example, Netflix now buys short films. They had one about women in India. I can't think of the name of it. I think it was called Period or something like that, but it was women in India who started a nonprofit or a group collective where they made sanitary napkins for themselves. And it's a beautiful short film, and Netflix either bought it after the fact or they funded it. I'm not exactly sure what it was. That's really odd. And, Netflix is competing with Warner Brothers and all the major studios, often beating them out. And so there is room now for the short form film to have a really flourishing life after, just putting into the film festival circuit or something like that. So I think it's important to get stories out there in the short form content that people may not want to sit down and watch for 2 hours or something like that. You can get a message out more quickly and more easily with shorter form video. And it's also given a lot of people an opportunity to find distribution pipelines that weren't possible before. So the reason we can see such a, diverse story landscape is because of the short form. We're not necessarily in mass seeing tons of feature films from a bunch of diverse people. That's just not happening. But there's a decent chance that you might see, something on TikTok or some, film that kind of took off on YouTube or a short doc somewhere, or something on Now This or Attention or something like that. There's a decent chance you may see that, although you may not be the exact audience it was intended for. So I think short forms really are kind of coming into their own as being very specifically their own genre. That's one thing. More on the career specific filmmaker type of path, the reason I think you should make shorts before jumping into features is because you really do need to practice your craft and become disciplined. Pamela talked about how the short form gives you constraints. I think it's really good practice to know what you're limited to. And no matter how big your budget gets, even if you get like, Christopher Nolan level, something's gonna happen where you're gonna get on set and you're gonna have to figure something out that you didn't plan for. And you don't want that to be on a feature film set where you have, even if it's a micro budget feature film, it's $50,000 or something like that, which to me is still a lot of money, but not a lot of money for a film. you don't want to get on set and, be fumbling around and not know how to be flexible and, kind of make changes very quickly or rewrites if you have to. So doing short films helps you do that. And then doing multiple short films helps you do that. I learned in my own process that it's better to have a portfolio of work than maybe like one really great short film. And there's a few reasons for that. Number one, sometimes having one great short film isn't enough to catapult you to the next thing, because sometimes it can just kind of come off like, oh, that was like good luck, or, that's cool, but like, what else do you have? And then number two, again, sometimes it doesn't set you up for the type of success for like longevity. So sometimes you gotta have a short film and maybe you get a break and something happens, or you'll hear this about filmmakers and then you're just like, what happened to that filmmaker? Like they kind of peter out and you don't hear anything else about them. So I think they're good for getting messages out and getting them out quickly and getting exposure to different topics. And I also think they're good for building up your muscles as a filmmaker so that when you get these bigger opportunities, you're just going to nail them. And they're going to be, substantially less difficult than then just kind of jumping into the deep end.
Yeah, thanks. That's a bunch of good nuggets. Pamela, we're going to jump to you. Why do you think it's important?
Well, what I've experienced, I'm going to say it's easier and safer to screw things up in a short film, because you can make your mistakes. And if you even lose an entire shoot day, you don't have the impact of that on your short film like you would if you had to reshoot an entire day when you're doing a feature. The stakes are lower, everything is smaller. Usually you're not going from location to location for a short, maybe 2 or 3 locations max. Many shorts, I always try to shoot in one location. And then that saves a lot of trouble, because if we screw something up, we just go right back. So I think there's some inherent safeties involved in just doing the short form, getting a look at something really early on with your editors and saying, no, we got to redo this, or we didn't get the sound here. It's a process that can be repeated as necessary without the huge costs involved when you screw up something with a bigger budget, bigger cast, more locations.
Thanks, Pam. Melissa, how about you?
I think it's interesting to think about what Dionna was saying, because yes, absolutely. 10 years ago, people were saying you have to make a short film first as a calling card. And, a lot of filmmakers were found that way. At Sundance, you always heard about filmmakers, especially filmmakers from the minority communities, where their short films would be picked up at Sundance, or not picked up, they would be screened at Sundance. Some of them won awards, and then they would have meetings with usually smaller studios. But you look at people even like Taika Waititi, who he just directed episodes of The Mandalorian. He's going to direct a Star Wars feature. He's best known for Thor Ragnarok. He's an Indigenous New Zealander, a Maori filmmaker. He started with a short film that he made, funded through a government funding body in New Zealand for Maori filmmakers. That first film was 2 Cars, One Night. It actually was nominated for an Oscar, though it didn't win. And he plugged along making little films, and then because of the interest in his small films, even 15 years ago, he was able to cobble money together for a small feature, and then it built. I think that it was interesting to see in those days where you had people in the studio system or even in these independent houses that didn't understand the stories they were seeing necessarily, though the humanity in them grabbed onto something that the storyteller was saying. And oftentimes you saw films that were shorts that were taken into feature length, the same story, and it just didn't work. And then you're looking at the list of producers on it, and you're like, wow, there are 12 people on here. This is probably why the story doesn't work as well as the short works, right? But it is interesting. So yeah, that the way things were 10, 15 years ago. But again, as Dionna is saying, what we're seeing online, all these other outlets picking up short films like Netflix, that film is called Period, right? Who would finance, would Netflix have ever financed a film about menstruation, you know?
Right.
I mean, but that short film, and this is the interesting thing, I've seen this trend with documentaries. So many NGOs are financing docs, right? So if you are a working independent filmmaker, documentary filmmaker looking for a job, you could potentially pick up some money from an NGO on an interesting topic that's pretty much handed to you, and it could go all the way to the Oscars. And that's happened for a lot of people. And Period was, I think, the winner in 2018, maybe, and then Netflix picked it up. But again, it's just like, wow, that is a great film. Right? They have another short film about a Tarahumara female runner. That's the other thing, all these short female-centric films that, you know, we know by the numbers, we're still not seeing a lot of female-centric narrative feature films being financed and documentary films being financed. But in short format, we're seeing more and more of them. And I think the audiences are getting to see the talent that's out there. So some of the gatekeeping is breaking down. So that's a great reason in and of itself, I think, to continue to make short films, or to even try to make short film. And as Pam said, creative control, having a small budget. One of the most effective short films I ever saw was this crazy documentary that was just a 5-year-old. It wasn't even intent. It was just family footage, you know, on a vacation trip that I'm like, we got to cut this into a short, and it barely needed any editing. And it was just the hands of a 5-year-old trying to tie his shoes, and then the uncle trying to come in and help him, and the kid like swatting the uncle's hands away. And this went on for 5 minutes. That was it. It was pretty much one shot. And the tension, the arc of the story, you were like, is this kid going to be able to tie his shoe? It was so effective, and it cost nothing, you know? And that person ended up going on to do television, though not film, but still like got a lucrative job in television. So yeah, you could, at this point, virtually make a film for the cost of your cell phone bill, right?
Yeah, and that's a great point. Just at how with short form filmmaking, I mean, we could do this on our iPhones, right? And like you said, that's just a powerful example of something very simple, but very universally relatable. I'm gonna go to you, Harold, but looking at the time, you know, we're kind of getting close to 7:30. I have one more question for the panel after this, and then you know, we'll kick it to the audience. I see we do have a couple questions already. But Harold, if you could, why is short form filmmaking important? But then also, as the director of the award-winning feature Unarmed Man, you know, what were some of the things that you learned shooting shorts that helped you to be able to shoot a tight feature?
Yeah, so the biggest things, like I was blessed early in my career because I started my career in television news as a photojournalist, a cameraman, and you know, that was during that time period. I would make, you know, I would create, edit, or shoot, edit 2, you know, minute and a half projects a day, and I was getting a beginning, middle, and end twice a day, every day for like 2 years. And it helped me be very decisive in what I was shooting, how I was shooting, and then also think of everything as a beginning, middle, and end. And I think a lot of times, you know, the basics it is what a lot of filmmakers sort of don't have, because everybody wants to make that leap to be great and to be seen, and they kind of lose sight of the, you know, the 1, 2, 3 sort of, you know, reading is fundamental type stuff. And I think the short is a great place to get that, but you have to approach it under that sort of understanding, right? That this is where I'm going to make this short, watch it, and realize, oh, I took too much time to do this. or I didn't develop this enough, or I'm not, like it took me years just to be able to create a first act of a film that I'm proud of. Like it's you know, if you're really a student of the film, it's not, you know, it's easy to put video together and put it out, but it's very, you know, it can be very difficult to do this well, you know, and if you're not honest with yourself, you won't really see that. But long story short, short films are the way to learn how to make movies, whether it be physically making a movie, like the shooting, the editing, the whatever, but also the art, the storytelling that is necessary to make a successful film. So you should really look at, you know, you should make them first, just to I think Dionna was saying, exercise those muscles and understand what's going on. But also you need to make them to really understand how the craft of storytelling works, because that's essentially what we do. You know, whether it's a child tying his shoes, you have to. It still needs a beginning, middle, and end. And if you're not thinking about that, you're never really going to be very good at filmmaking, even if you're technically good at it. So, yeah, that's my answer.
All right, that's a great answer. So my next question, you know, especially for filmmakers that might be in the audience right now that are in, whether it's DC Black Film Festival, DC Shorts, one of the things about making short films, I guess sometimes in our mind is like, how are we going to make money off of this? And so I'm going to just kind of combine all of these different questions that I wanted to ask into one. But what are some ways that you all maybe have seen in terms of your short form filmmaking and either doing the film festival circuit or being able to get it picked up by someone? I know some of you have, you know, distribution and things like that, but not because yes, we probably would make films for fun, but like we do want to make a little living off of it. So have you all seen a good way to kind of like, what's the best way to get a good bang for your buck in terms of, you know, using your short film, whether it's running the circuit or grabbing distribution? And whoever wants to just start out.
Yeah, I'm you know, I'm a firm believer that you're not going to make money on short films. And I know the world is changing, and you know, it's moving faster, and there's more outlets, and there's, you know, things like I think Quibi now does 10-minute episodes. So the world's changing and things are becoming different, but traditionally you're just not going to make any money. For me, you're paying for the education, right? So you're paying for the ability to make a film, produce it, edit it, put it out into the world, put it into film festivals, see what people are biting, what they're not biting, and then learn. It's a whole art, especially now. Like, you're not going to be just a director anymore, or just a writer. Like, you have to be a little bit of all things to be able to survive now. So even though you're not going to make money off the film, you may get attention that will eventually get you the money that you're looking for, but you're kind of paying for the education of it all. And, you know, these are sort of things that you can't learn in college, and you can't learn from even someone telling you this is how it works. You got to go out there and you got to get beat up, and you got to come back and figure out, you know, how do I, you know, do better next time.
You know, Kevin, I agree with what Harold's saying. I always considered it to just be an investment. Just like when you start applying to festivals and you're paying all those application fees, it's an investment. What are you going to get out of it? A bunch of laurels to stick on your film. But it's an investment that you have to make. So I've never kind of gone out to monetize a short, but I have gone out to get awards. And I try to start with a screenplay, put them into screenplay awards. And then when you're producing it, you've already got some amount of proof of concept. Then you're back out on the festival circuit again with your completed film. Then you can tell people you're an award-winning filmmaker, which I am not. I'm only an award-winning screenwriter, but one day.
That's okay. You got to rep as many awards as you get. I forgot that I was an award-winning filmmaker. Does grad school count? I got the trophy over there, right? Like, Dionna, how about you?
So, I mean, I'll definitely agree with the last two panelists. I really do not recommend that anyone goes out with the idea of self-funding a short film and expecting to make money off of it. But I'll add some addendums to this, if I may. So my short film, Love New York, had a pretty nice festival run. It was the first film I took out on the festival circuit. To put this into a little bit more context, my last 4 short films I've gotten distribution for. So let me circle back. So with Love New York, what I did is I took it on the film festival circuit first, Kevin's, DC Black Film Festival being one of them and several others. And normally it's recommended that you want to take a short film on this festival circuit for about a year or two if you're really, going to milk it, but a year is pretty solid. Anyway, as I was getting to the 1-year mark of my festival run, about 9 months in, Issa Rae came out with something called Short Film Sunday. She actually came out with it earlier, but her star was rising at the point in which I was getting to about 9 months into my festival run. So she has this thing called Short Film Sundays, and it's for filmmakers of colors to submit a short film once a month, and she'll put it on her platform. Issa was just half a heartbeat away from being an A-list celebrity at this time. And I've been watching her since Misadventures of an Awkward Black Girl. So I knew what was about to happen because Insecure was coming out and she was on HBO. So I knew exactly where she was going. So I made a decision to pull my film off of the festival circuit, to not bother to pay for more festivals and try to get a year or two out of it, and to submit it to Issa Rae Short Film Sundays. Of course, knowing that if it got picked, once the film's online, typically you can't put it in festivals. Fortunately, the film got picked for her platform. Fantastic. So she puts it on. Now my film to this day is associated with an A-list celebrity. I still have distribution. They have really, really friendly terms in terms of the licensing. It's like super friendly. It's really about getting you some attention as a creator. At any rate, so today the films have like 110,000 views, which is not bad for a short film that I didn't make to go viral or anything like that. And it's still been a really, really solid calling card for me. Have I made a ton of money off of that film? No. I made like a few $100 here and there. They paid an honorarium. I just recently got paid for the film again, like unexpectedly. So no, I haven't made much money, but did I get a huge return on investment? Yes. And it's a return on investment that I can continue to get. Every so once in a while, I'll meet someone and they're like, oh, I actually saw your film before. And so, that's something to get out of a short that's very tangible. My next few projects after that, because I had some success with that film, then the next shorts got a little easier to get attention for. My next 2 projects, one was a web series pilot called The Next Right Thing. And the next one is a short film called Such a Deal that's coming out like next month with a platform called A Space for Creators, which, just FYI, you all might want to bookmark that website, aspaceforcreators.com. They're a digital arm of iOne Digital, or TV1, if you guys are familiar with them. And they're looking for content from creators of color to distribute. This is unusual, as again, getting money for shorts at all is very rare. But this is one platform in which they're starting to pay creators for their shorts, and you could get some money on revenue. But I did not make this short film, to be clear here, with the idea of I'll get any money from distribution or any, post funds or anything like that. So my general advice is I really do not recommend making a short film with the goal in mind of getting money after you complete the film. But if you look hard enough, there are starting to be platforms where it's possible for you to get distribution and some revenue share on the back end. It's just, you probably won't necessarily make your money completely back. And I just can't see that being like a good reason to make it short. I will suggest that if your interest is in making short form content and making money from it, I would really just highly recommend going the route of like TikTok and becoming like an Instagram influencer. And I'm not, saying that in like a negative way at all. It's just a totally different route. So if I was determined to make money from short form content, I would be on YouTube right now with a nonfiction, unscripted cooking show or traveling show, like something that's like easy for people to like and easy to attract advertisers. That's one lane. That's not the lane of fiction shorts or like, kind of heavy documentaries. The kind of last part that I'll add to that, and this is basically where I am in my career now, once you've built a portfolio of work, you can actually start going out to get money for people to fund your shorts. That's obviously different than me making money from my shorts, but that's better than it just being me paying for my shorts. So where I am now, because I have a portfolio of shorts and I have, some cosigns from distributors and some other people, I can approach, let's say an NGO. If I want to make a documentary and I have the right subject matter, I can go to them and say, hey, I have, this project I'm working on, and I can then point to a portfolio of work that shows them, okay, she can handle a budget. So there are opportunities available to you to maybe where you're not only always self-funding your shorts, but you do normally have to build up to that point.
Yeah, I think those are some really great points, Dionna, and the rest of the panel. I really appreciate that because, I do think, like you all said, with short form filmmaking, you can't really go into it expecting, but I do think you can have a plan as to how you're going to capitalize on making your star be known. I want to take it to the questions. So for the audience, we're going to start opening up for questions. The first question is actually for you, Pam, specifically. What do you like best about Old Town Alexandria? That's from Huck.
I love Old Town Alexandria. So little known fact, I'm actually from New Jersey. You can't hear it in my accent. But I've lived here in Alexandria for many years. But I have to say my favorite thing, all right, it's a tie. It's between the history and the waterfront. And everybody who's in the area should go and visit.
Awesome. So have you shot around Old Town as well? Because Old Town, the one thing I love about the DMV, DC, Maryland, Virginia area is that basically you can kind of go anywhere and it can double as DC or Baltimore or whatever. So have you also shot there?
Yes. And, that's a really good question, Kevin, because the Alexandria Film Office is awesome. It is very easy to get a film permit. And it is also very easy to get parking permits to load in and load out along your film site, which if whoever's laughing, they know how that's sometimes the bigger problem.
I live in LA, and that's very enviable, to say the least.
Yeah, Dion, so exactly what, the Alexandria Film Office is amazing. And considering how many big projects they get, to allow our little shorts to film, in Market Square in some of the really well-known landmarks is awesome. And I have shot there a couple times. So yes, it is great to shoot in Alexandria, and everybody should shoot films there, and let me know and I'll come run your set for you.
That's a good offer right there. Next up, we got a question from Brandon Haynes. He asked, I am working to fund a sci-fi short and wanted to know, besides self-funding, grants, crowdfunding, and investors, what are other ways you can go about funding?
I think those are the ways. I don't know. I mean, those are the ways, unless you're gonna, stumble onto some buried treasure. I think you kind of got to work with what you can.
Yeah. Sometimes you'll see brands do like branded content and stuff, but there's such a kind of winding and circular road as to why you would land in a room for them to be paying for some of your content anyway. That seems a little out the way. But yeah, self-funding is easiest if you can do it, because obviously even writing for grants and stuff is going to take some time. So
I think also if you're making something like a sci-fi film, if you have any specials or effects that you can't afford, then you shouldn't be making it at this point. It's kind of like, if the people that love you don't want to help finance your film, then maybe you're not onto something. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Yikes. That's a good point, though.
I hate to be harsh about it, but I watch so many films and I'm like, why'd you make this? And also part of it is don't hurt yourself. I think that there's so many, that's hard to say, especially if you're creative and you just want to put things out there, but it can destroy your life, you know? And so if you could do something small extremely well, it's much more enjoyable in the long run than really like stretching yourself and everyone around you to their thinnest point. Like calling in, do you really want to call in all your favors for one short film that is not going to work out in the end anyway? And as a programmer also, I'm really focused on performance a lot these days. Like now, it used to be so much of production value, but now you can get pretty decent production. I mean, even on this video call, we have pretty decent, you know, everything, sound, lighting, but performances, you know. So if you can get great performance, I think that that is something to strive for more than effects. And, you know, now that there's like the floor is lava, you know, like on all these YouTube shows, everybody's using like lava effects. It's like, okay, we don't need to see that. People want to see actually practicals, I think so.
That's funny.
Keep it cheap.
So, you know, Kevin.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I do have a little something. So one thing I didn't hear, and it's in the neighborhood of funding, is kind of the barter system. And DC has a very robust barter system for films, which is why I said, yeah, I'll come out and run your set, but then you're going to hold the boom mic for me on my film. We're not necessarily paying each other, so we keep our budget down, but we're all kind of pitching in to each other's films. And like I said, that's not funding, but that's definitely a way to save costs, is to team up with other filmmakers and say, hey, what do you need on your set that I've got? You want film permits from the Alexandria Film Office? I got you, but I need a production manager. So you might want to think of that as well.
Yeah, great point. We had another question from Josephine Sun. She says, what do you guys do for music, and at what point in the filmmaking do you start searching for music?
Oh, can I jump in on that? So there are composers that work with you. They will work with you to score your film, and they will not charge you because they want to get their work out. I can think of at least 3 off the top of my head. People don't always think first, I want to get an original score. The first thought is always, where are we going to get the Creative Commons music? But absolutely look for those musicians, especially these digital musicians who want to, that, you know, they want to practice their craft bigger and get into soundtrack and score, and they will score your short. So I don't know how I can get them. I can give a few, and he can distribute them, but absolutely go out and look for those people that want to do the score for you.
Yeah, that's good advice in terms of like looking for someone to give you, or not give you, score the film for you, or work with you, I guess, to give you original score. In terms of, let me just look at the question again, because I believe you asked at what stage, right? At what point? I would say if you can start thinking about music as you're writing the script, that's a really good idea. So you can start honing things down, and just be prepared to be flexible on that. I just finished up a short film recently, and I had a composer work on it, and I had an idea for like a jazz type soundtrack, like kind of an upbeat jazz soundtrack that I had in my head the whole time I was writing the script. Like I was like writing to it, and I location scouted, listening to it, and it was really dorky. And then the film came, and before I went to my composer, I had a rough cut, like a pretty good rough cut, and had temp music in it. And I was almost to picture lock or very close to it. And so picture lock means when you're not going to do any more editing. And so I, looked for a film composer, found one in a group that I'm a part of. And, she started sending me music back and forth, and it was like totally wrong. And that was totally my fault because jazz music didn't work. It didn't make any sense with the piece. So I would say find some temp music, try to find music that inspires you in the writing process. That's ideal. And then once you get into the edit, find some temp pieces from maybe, famous artists or artists that you naturally like and put it in, but just be prepared to be flexible in the post-production process when working with your composer that maybe, the temp music may not be perfect. I will say this, if you're able to barter with people and work you know, with them for free, I think that's cool. And sometimes that's very mutually beneficial. But if you're able to put aside even just like a few $100 or something like that, just to show someone, hey, like, thanks, I appreciate your time. Like, you know, I know you're working hard. I do highly recommend that. I know when we're self-funding films, you know, there's so many expenses and there's so much to think of, but I think in general, it's good to just have like just at least a little bit of money set aside for your composer before you jump into production, whatever that amount is, if nothing else, as a courtesy. And I've never had like a huge budget for a score, but even having just a few $100s has gotten me some composers who like have literally worked on like Hulu shows and Amazon shows and like featured films that I went on to. They're like Noah Baumbach, I think is how you pronounce his name.
Yeah.
Like, my composer for Love New York has worked with him on like a couple of films, and she's nobody that I would be like, oh, I can afford her. But, you know, I had to have something to offer. So she liked the film, she liked me, but I also could say like, hey, I can pay you, you know, a little bit too. So I think it's good to plan early for your composer. So, you know, you make their job a little bit easier and you can also give them a little something.
Yeah, I've worked with a composer once on a short, and it actually worked out. It actually worked out for me, so I don't have any complaints. But that was the only time I worked with an original composer. What I do, what I've been doing is, and I hate to, because they're not paying me, but I hate to put them out there like that. What I use is a site called artlist.io. And they have really high quality music. Some of it's just music, just songs, but some of it is designed specifically for films. So these are really good composers that are designing music for film. And if you subscribe to them a yearly subscription, you can get a license to use any music you choose in your film without having to pay any extra fees or anything like that. So I think the subscription is like $300 a year, but you have unlimited access to not only the music, but you'll be able to get a license to put the music in your film. So that's kind of the way I've been doing it lately. But you know, I'm a music guy, even though I don't have any musical ability. I like music. I love music. So music is really, I've even come up with films from listening to music or listening to a song. It created an image in my head that kind of grew and grew and grew and became a film. So music is way early. It's in the writing. Sometimes it's the motivation for the writing. But yeah, so I would say think about music early and often, because it's part of the experience of the film, you know. And at least for me, I'm a big score guy and music guy. So think about it early and often, and there are ways to get a composer for not a lot of money, but there's also ways to get around that if you don't know a good composer or you can't afford a good one. If you can scrounge up, you know, $300-400 for a year, you can have access to a really high quality library that you can use.
Can I give a couple quick tips?
Can you make it real quick? Because we're coming up on the 10-minute mark. And go ahead.
If you're in DC, I would say check out the Arts and Humanities Council list of people who have applied for grants, because those are people who are generally not score composers, but they are working musicians, and they're looking for work if they're applying for a $10,000 grant from the city. And it's just good to familiarize yourself with local musicians. And sometimes you could do a trade. When I was young, my brother and I and some friends, we used to do a trade where we would have a musician work with us to compose a small score, and then we would trade some of the footage for a music video for this artist. You know, so you're actually getting your work out there in multiple fields, both in the music field and in filmmaking, and sometimes that can turn into getting work as a music video director, which for hire, which is also great. And then on that tip too, I would really look into local music studios. and just like try to follow a little bit of your local scene. I think Issa Rae does a great job too, even on her big shows, like really using local talent. And you're like, wow, I've never heard the song before. And it's because it's a person, you know, working down the street from her that she's been following for however long. And they still need exposure. They still want exposure. And oftentimes, if you just hook into a studio that's maybe in your neighborhood, or even some high school kids that are trying to lay down some beats, like the producer knows who else is working and can help you find a sound. And then that helps, you know, drive business towards the studio too. So, you know, think small, but really think about lifting up your local creative community.
Yeah, thanks.
Speaking of, I know you're gonna cut me off, Kevin, but really quickly, I want to a shout out to speaking of local artists, a shout out to Eric Terrell, who did an entire original album for my latest film, Unarmed Man, and just he talked to me, he saw the film, he liked it, he said, I want to do something that's motivating me to do something, and he created an entire album. A local guy with all local talent, you know, super dope. Check it out. You can find it on Amazon, or excuse me, on iTunes, or anywhere you can get an album. It's Unarmed Man original soundtrack.
It seems like everybody is really jazzed about the music, and I agree with all you guys' points. Like, I do think that there's so many times when you can hear a tune and then it automatically puts you in a certain image, a certain space, a place, and so that's really kind of cool. And I'm just like stepping outside of the moderator zone to say that's like, it's cool as artists how that happens. I think music and film go together in such a great way. So we got about 8 more minutes. I will say this: if you are a filmmaker, we're doing a musician filmmaker speed date. If you hit us up at info@dcbff.org, we have about 7 legit either composers or you know, beat makers, etc. And we're going to be doing that this week. So, but you do have to have some credentials to your name, because we really want to start. What I have envisioned is, like Dionna was kind of saying, and Melissa, everybody, how there are these great musicians out there. There's these great filmmakers, and I see them come through all the time. But now I want to just start connecting them, because, you know, as so many of these different filmmakers that have come through the fest to go on to do bigger and better things, start making that connection, because it does go hand in hand. All right, so we got 7 more minutes, and we have 2 more questions. So I'm going to ask the panelists, do you want to go past 8, or do you want to just go ahead and kind of knock out these last questions and we'll close it out?
I don't mind going past 8. I'm seeing the chat's pretty active, and it seems like people are interested in asking some more questions. But I'll just speak for myself. So
I agree.
Here, man. Let me know. Let me know what you need.
All right, that's what's up. So we'll go 8:15. 8:15. So the next question was from Kyoka Rhodes, Kex Studios. What's up? It's specifically for you, Dionna. What was the most challenging project you've worked on, and how did you get through it?
I was trying to reply to the chat because there were some good stuff in there too. Kex, thank you for that question. Most challenging project. You know, every project seems like the most challenging project, I think, when I'm working on it. So that's kind of a tough question. I also used to work as an assistant director. I really think my most challenging projects were probably when I would assistant direct feature films, but we'll leave that off for now. My most challenging project was my last one that I just completed, Such a Deal. So I recently moved from New York to Los Angeles 2 years ago this September. And before I left New York, I made a flurry of short content because I wanted to make sure I had something to go out to LA with and have, you know, like a decent portfolio. So anyway, the last film I shot in New York was Such a Deal, and I shot it a week before I had to move across the country. I was working 2 jobs at the time. I was a department chair at New York Film Academy, department chair of the post-production department. I also was teaching as an adjunct at another community college just to save us some extra money. And I had to fly out to LA a week before production to find an apartment to live in LA. So Melissa talked about, you know, not killing yourself to make it short. And boy, did I need that information, a little bit earlier, to be honest. I was just so determined to get all these films done and stuff. And kind of long story short, I was really burned out. I did all this stuff. I, had to save up all this money to move to LA and transfer my job and all these things. And I had another project that I had completely wrapped like the summer before coming out to LA. And I was taking that on the festival circuit with my team. And it was just too much. So I don't know if the shoot was all that difficult, but what was difficult was my timing was not the best. I piled on too much work for myself at once. And so it ended up taking me 2 years to complete the film, which is like, to me, ridiculous for a short. But because I was like trying to get on my feet in LA and all this other stuff, it kind of drug out the process of the short. And then I honestly probably needed like another shoot day, which I didn't give myself because I was rushing to do too much stuff. So then I got to the edit and I was like, oh my God, like what was I doing? So it took me a long time to like figure out the edit and all this stuff. So I would say the next project that you see from me will have been the most difficult. But the kind of, to be a little bit more positive about that process, there were some good things that came out of it as well, because the process took me, I didn't have the bandwidth to finish the film as quickly as I did. And so because of that, I probably had a lot more of an objective view of the film than I would have otherwise, because I spent a lot of time with it. And so I do think I made the film as best as it was going to be. And I also was able to get finishing funds for the film from a Space for Creators, just because of a timing thing. I was on the festival circuit with the other project I was talking about, The Next Right Thing. And at this point, I had such a deal for like a year. And someone saw that project, The Next Right Thing, and liked it, and then got interested in this project, and I was able to get finishing funds for it. So, in one way, the timing of it worked really well. So I guess everything happens as it's supposed to. But, again, to kind of go back to Melissa's advice, like, just pace yourself. I think that would be like my advice for anybody.
All right, awesome. So the next question is from Brandon, and he asks, how many times do you think you can hit up friends and family for funding your short? I guess he's saying that previous shorts have won awards in the past, and usually in crowdfunding, I've seen the majority of funding coming from friends and family. So do you guys have any crowdfunding thoughts, examples?
Crowdfunding's hard.
I don't have any crowdfunding thoughts and examples. I've actually been fairly blessed to be able to have, so I funded almost all of my work except for my last stuff, and I'm getting out of that now. But I would imagine like twice is the cutoff. Because I mean, especially if you're making a short, it's for you, it's a great experience. It's a learning experience. It's something that's going to help you in the future. For them, it's money gone. It's not an investment for them unless they feel good about investing in you, right? So you really, you're not asking for a loan. You're never going to pay them back. So I think like twice is probably like the cutoff. You know what I mean? Like, after 2 times, enough is enough.
Yeah, I'm gonna second that. I've only done crowdfunding once for my graduate school thesis project, and everybody feels bad for you when you're a student, so you can kind of get away with that. But it's exhausting. Crowdfunding is like really exhausting, in my opinion. I guess if you have like producers or something who can handle that for you, I think it's cool. One of my favorite crowdfunding campaigns was Dear White People. They had a fantastic crowdfunding campaign. I do think, they're probably the exception rather than the rule. But, if you got an idea that's just really kind of lightning in a bottle, and you have the right team and you can make the right, visuals for it to really intrigue people, that's a great example of a really good crowdfunding campaign, because it was actually funded by the crowd. It wasn't just like family members and stuff like that. It was people. I was one of those, people who donated. It was people who really wanted to see that film and thought it was like fun and loved the little, viral video that went with it. So if you're able to make something like that, sure. But as Harold was saying, if it's it's mostly just going to be an investment for you. So I think if you're going to crowdfund multiple times, it has to be something that's like really for the audience. I had another example in mind. Oh no, I think I lost it. Let me see if it comes back. It was another good crowdfunding example, but I forgot.
I can give you a good crowdfunding example. Mine failed when I was trying to do, it was called the Hollywood Blackout, but I wanted to do a documentary on diversity and the lack thereof in Hollywood. So this is like pre-Oscar So White. And so I went ahead and it was a great learning experience because it seemed like all of my peers were getting funded. So sure, this has to get funded. But what I learned is that one, a lot of people have a bag of money on the side anyways. They put that in there and then boom, it looks like, oh, okay, people are really getting behind this. But there's like these little tricks and things like that. But I will say this, out of that failure came the DC Black Film Festival. So, you know, it's a learning experience for everything. Exactly. Thank you for...
I donated to that, by the way, Kevin. Just
you
FYI.
sure did.
I remember. I do remember that now that you say it. I was going to say the example I was going to use, it wasn't crowdfunding, but a different way to look at things considering how you can, you know, get attention to your projects would be Morgan Cooper. So he didn't do crowdfunding that I know of, but he did that great, you know, short trailer pseudo film about like the dramatic take on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And now he has a deal with Will Smith. However that came about, I don't know. There's normally a lot of things that go involved with that. But I would say these days it might be smarter to do something like that, like make a really interesting, you know, short sizzle trailer type thing to get people's attention, see if you can get it to go viral, and then see what kind of interest you can drive to yourself. I feel like the crowdfunding thing for filmmakers may be, not the best way to approach things these days.
I think that, like, as far as like asking for money from your family and friends, like if they're willing to still give it, I mean, in a way, that's a good sign. To me, that's a good sign. Like they believe in you. They believe you have something that other people want to see, but they might just not have the money. It's like, okay, hit up your friends that don't smoke and don't drink because maybe they have a little bit of extra money that they can put towards your film. Like that's going to be their vice, like supporting your films. But for crowdfunding, unless you have someone dedicated to it full time, because it is a full-time job, and if you are a creative mind that's not good at business, etc., not good at marketing, don't go there because it'll sap your energy and it'll make you hate your project that you loved before the crowdfunding. I think that there are a lot of other weird ways that you can try to capture funds. I think, again, like Dionna's saying, like you could be really strategic about things that you can put up on YouTube, but even that takes time. Again, it's about maybe investing in that way. Like if you want to really have a source of income from YouTube, you have to, again, treat it like a job and be regular about it. Understand the different revenue generating streams and which one would work best for you. And just, you'll have to look at it as, you know, honing your craft for something bigger maybe, but it's difficult.
Yeah. And then also you got to understand that everybody only has a certain amount of bandwidth. Mm-hmm. So every time you add something else to it, you take away from something else. You can only do so much. Like everybody only has the capacity to do so much. And if you're not like me, I've never attempted crowdfunding, but I haven't because I know I would not be good at it. It's not for me. I choose to expend my energy in different ways, and just bringing on a whole new element to it would just take from something else, and eventually you end up with only a fraction of what you want to create.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Harold, because it does expend your energy. Like you want to be focused on the film, but then you're focusing on, can I make a graphic that says this reward or whatever the case may be? And it's like,
send this guy a script because he gave me $25.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly. And not that it doesn't work. I mean, it has worked. And I know friends that have been able to, put together their feature documentary. So it does work. I think it's just a matter of the individual and it coming down to like, do you have the time? Do you have the ability to put in that effort? All right, so we have about 10 more minutes to go. Harold, I was going to say, can you put in the chat the music website that you mentioned, just so people could be able to find that as well?
Yeah, I'm on my phone, so if I do it, you're going to be looking at me.
Okay, I think Brandon just did it.
But
Artlist.io.
It's Artlist, yeah, ARTLIST.io. So no com, no org, artlist.com. Or excuse me, artlist.io. And they're good. If you don't know any composers, or for whatever reason you can't get one to work with you, or you can't get one to work with you that you like, they're a very viable option and a cost-friendly option as well.
All right, this is gonna be the last question for the night. Comes from Brandon, who said, "We active." He is active. All right, he says, "If you have the funds for an Alexa Mini, would you shoot the short or invest in the camera?"
I would rent the camera and shoot the short.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it depends.
Yeah, it depends.
It's kind of, are you trying to create a new revenue stream for rentals? I mean, if the idea, it kind of depends. We talked about earlier, you may not make money from the short, but you can make money from camera rentals. So if the idea were to get a camera and put it on KidSplit or, all the other websites now and get money from rentals. And is this Brandon's a DP by trade?
Trade, yeah. So,
I mean, maybe buy the camera if you're a DP. I'm not. It kind of depends on your.
I mean, if you're not going to go out and use it, if you're going to use it for this short, it's not worth the buy. If you're I think like Dionna was saying, if you're a DP, then buy it, because you're investing in yourself. But if you're not going to go out and make money shooting other people's stuff with this camera, there's cameras that are comparable for a fraction of the price.
Go ahead. Was somebody going to say? Go ahead.
It's funny that you're a DP, because my answer was going to be whatever my DP tells me to do. If my DP needs to rent equipment, or we need to rent lights or sound equipment, I usually do. But I'm probably not going to buy him a camera.
Yeah. So Gary Vaynerchuk always has this thing. He says, basketball in my hands has absolutely no ROI. If I got an Alexa Mini, I'm going to be like, yo, where's Google? How do I work this? But it makes sense if you are a DP. Well, yeah, you can not only shoot your own stuff, but then you can also go shoot other people's stuff. So I think it's definitely a question about, what does that ROI look like for you? All right, so it's 8:08. I said that I wanted to make sure I respect everybody's time. If we could, I'd like to just go around to the group. How can people find you online, follow you on social media? Melissa, let's start with you.
I'm not that active on social media. I know it's terrible, but it just gets me down sometimes. But you can find me under American Mongrel on Twitter, and Twitter, Facebook, IG. I think it's all the same. American Mongrel, Mongrel.
Harold.
Yeah, if you're on Instagram, it's at Harold Jackson 3, the number 3. And Facebook, you can just look me up, Harold Jackson the 3rd. Either way, it's fine. I don't have any Twitter. Twitter's bad for you, but that's how you find me.
Dionna.
It's at Dionna Film. So my first name in film. I'll put it in the chat. I'm most active on IG. So if you're gonna add me, probably add me on there.
And then Pam, I see you've already put your stuff in the chat, but if you want to say it.
Well, yeah, because I have a caveat. If you follow me on Instagram, it's going to be pictures of me and my sister and our friends running every Sunday. But if you engage me on Twitter, I will retweet your projects and your information about what you're working on, because I don't use Twitter for anything other than that.
Awesome. So you can follow DC Black Film Festival at DC Black Film Fest or DC Black Film Festival, depending on if you're on IG, Facebook, or Twitter. I am at Picture Lock Show for all of my film reviews and all that good stuff. As we're bringing this to a close, I just want to say, again, if you go to dcbff.org, you will be able to find out more information on our panels this week, the films, all that good stuff. So please visit dcbff.org. In the meantime, I just want to thank all of our panelists, and y'all put your ones in the chat if you enjoyed this discussion. But Melissa, Dionna, Pam, Harold, thank you so much for just giving us your time and your expertise on the subject. This was definitely very informational.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kevin.
My pleasure. All right. So once again, go to dcbff.org for more details on the festival. Definitely appreciate your support. And tomorrow, let's see, we got our filmmaker, our actually networking happy hour. And then we'll have our Making Black Lives Matter Through Film panel. I have implemented that since the first year, and I think it's extremely important because a lot of times as artists, we might not be the ones that are actually out there on the front lines picketing, but we can use our art to help educate and spur conversations. So that should be a really fun panel. Melissa, I'm going to throw it over to you to give a pitch for DC Shorts.
Well, so DC Shorts, we have our online festival still open until the 23rd. So check it out. It's dcshorts.com. 168 short films are up right now.
All right. Thanks again to our panelists. Thanks again to DC Shorts for collaborating on this. And in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.